Welcome to Mom Matters, created by moms for moms. You know, the World Health Organization calls climate change the greatest threat to humanity, and it's also a major public health crisis, especially for our children. So today we have Dr. Ethan Sims of St. Luke's and Dr. Wesley Pidcock from St. Alphonsus explaining how kids are more vulnerable to both the physical and emotional effects of climate change, and how you can take action, starting with the first ever Climate and Health Symposium. It's actually happening this Friday, May 16th. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
And that this is a unique topic from what we kind of usually tackle here on Mom Matters, but the involvement of the psychological and physical impacts on our kids, I just think it's incredibly important that we share with our parents out there. So as we venture into this, I want to talk a little bit more though about climate change and, as mentioned, its impact on children, but the background on the effects that you guys have noticed.
Well, climate change is one of those unique public health crises in that it affects all of us, but it particularly affects more vulnerable populations such as the elderly, low-income populations, and children. Some of that's because of their basic physiology. You know, they're not just tiny adults. They're different in the sense that they tend to breathe more frequently than adults. So things like poor air quality, they're exposed to more of that. And as a result, they have developing organ systems throughout their body. Basically, all of their organ systems are still growing in development.
Yeah.
And if you take that combination of developing organ systems with exposures to toxins, it can lead to significant negative impacts, both physically and from a mental health standpoint.
Wow, that's a whole new perspective, I think, for a lot of people,
Yeah.
right? We don't stop to think of climate change that way and their environmental impact. We think, oh, we're gonna miss species, right? We think about how it impacts wildlife and then plants, but not really truly what physically it's doing to us, which completely makes sense,
Right. Yeah.
When you talk about it that way, it's like, well, yeah, duh, okay, maybe we should really stop and think about this a little deeper.
Exactly.
So basically, you're kind of referring to climate change, though, as a threat to our safety, right, physically, and also, though, mentally and emotionally. So I want to know more about the psychological effects, though, that we're seeing when it comes to wildfires and floods and how that impacts our kids.
Go ahead.
I think kids especially are impacted by this existential threat that climate change poses, and hear lots of scary things about climate change and how it's impacting the world. And it leads to this pervasive sense of dread for kids that it manifests itself as climate anxiety or climate doom. This concept of doom scrolling is very common in people that are focused on climate change and its impacts. And kids do a lot of that, where they're fixating on these negative potential future outcomes that we're seeing, and a feeling of despair that adults who have the power to make decisions aren't doing anything about it. And that's led to things like increased problems with suicide, increased problems with depression and anxiety. But climate change itself causes what we call a threat multiplier. So, it's driving the extreme weather that's causing extreme heat and wildfire smoke in Idaho, especially, that lead to things like difficulty concentrating, poor performance on test scores, problems with PTSD, even dementia. And as Dr. Pidcock pointed out, kids, because of their longer length of exposure to these conditions, are more likely to suffer from these things at a greater frequency.
Oh my goodness, okay. Share with us some of the signs that we think our children might be experiencing a kind of a climate-related stress factor, if you will, physically, emotionally. What are some signs?
There's a whole wide range of things you can see. It can be from relatively vague symptoms such as like poor sleep, lack of concentration, fatigue, stomach aches, headaches, all the way from, more like what can appear like pure panic and like acute events like with a wildfire, from like rapid heart rate to really rapid breathing or shallow breathing as well too.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Give us some strategies, though. What can we do to help children build a little more resilience when it comes to the stress factors of climate change?
Yeah, one of my favorite speakers always says that action is the antidote to despair.
That's true.
And I think supporting our kids in getting involved and engaged in their community is a great way to help them deal with it. We don't want to deny that this is happening, to deny that this is a stressor to them. We want to acknowledge their feelings and help them get engaged in a community so they can take some collective action, which we know is a great way to counter despair and anxiety. So it's not just our kids getting involved in things, it's us as adults getting involved in things and not making it their generation's problem, but acknowledging that we contributed the largest to this problem. We've got the resources to deal with this problem that they don't have, and leading by example, and not just supporting them individually, but getting involved ourselves.
And there's a great opportunity too for people to do exactly that. Tell us about your symposium.
Yeah, so this is the first of its kind for the region. It's the Climate and Health Treasure Valley Health Symposium. And basically it's a project that Ethan and I and several others have been working on for the last 6 to 8 months. And it's the two biggest health systems, that being St. Alphonsus and St. Luke's, coming together. And we've organized an educational symposium that'll be this Friday. There'll be several speakers from around the country that are coming in to talk about some of the basic science of climate change, its health impacts, and most importantly, what are some of the practical solutions that we can implement here in the Valley to help combat this problem.
I love the unification between the two major hospital systems too on this. That it really kind of elevates the importance of the topic, right? The importance of you two coming together, the systems coming together to make sure people understand just how serious this really is. Where can people go so they can learn more and they can get the symposium on the calendar?
You can just search the Treasure Valley Climate and Health Symposium, and there should also be a QR code as well that we provided. So
wonderful.